Hey there, pioneers. Welcome to the Reflections Cast, designed to immerse you in teachings about goal setting, dream building, and all things dynamic living. Join us for inspiring conversations as we unwrap these topics and offer insights for seeking positive change in your life. Here's Season 2, Episode 7, A Realistic Challenge. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Steve.
And I'm Melody.
And we are so excited to have you guys here for another awesome breakdown of these effective guidelines for goal setting. With Skip today, we're going to be going into 6 and 7 of this pretty large list that he's been going over. If you haven't heard the previous episodes, go ahead and go back to, I think like 2 episodes ago is when we started this chain of guidelines. But today is going to be an awesome lesson that I can't wait to get into. But before I do, just wanted to remember to invite you all to send us that feedback. We love it. We're getting some comments in and we'll do another Q&A or response time maybe in a future episode, but just wanted to send that invitation out there again. You can leave us a voicemail on our Spotify. You can send us an email at thereflectionscast@gmail.com, or you can just leave a comment on whatever platform you're listening to us on, whether that's YouTube or some other podcast receiver. We love getting that feedback, and just know that you guys are enjoying what we're doing, or if there's something you guys would like us to change about the show, we'd love to hear it. I know we've been doing a lot on goal setting. We're powering through this final crescendo of Skip's talk, and man, I can't wait to get into it. He's going to get into some awesome points coming up, so stick with us, guys. But before we get to Skip, Melody, could you tell us a little bit more about that awesome thing called Pioneer Circle?
Absolutely. We are just really ramping up our work for this new generation of Circle A. And so this podcast is certainly a part of what we're doing. But in addition to the podcast, we are doing a lot of work with our Circle A Summit, which is our family camp that we're going to be having in Michigan this summer. And then our Pioneer Circle, which is our coaching platform for young pioneers and the families and people who support them. So we are having a great time in the Pioneer Circle with our monthly coaching calls and our weekly videos. And just daily inspirational messages from our leadership team. In addition to that, we are ramping up our web presence. So if you haven't checked out our new website yet, you can do that at pioneercircle.org. We'd love to have you guys check it out, give us some feedback on the new website. You can sign up for pre-order information for the new book that's coming out, and you can get more information about joining the Pioneer Circle and the Summit. So head over to pioneercircle.org to check out all of that. In addition, we're also really ramping up our social media presence. So if you haven't followed us on Facebook and Instagram, I would really love to invite you to do that. You can follow Circle A Insta and Pioneer Circle, both Facebook and Instagram. And so we've got a lot of content that is starting to populate there and that is going to be coming out over the next several months. And I don't think you guys are going to want to miss it. So go ahead, follow us on the socials and share it with your friends, because I think it's going to be really helpful to all of us. So we can't wait to share more with you about the Pioneer Circle coming soon.
All right. Thank you, Melody. Yeah, the Pioneer Circle is so cool, guys. You have to check out this new website. You have to see what new projects are coming down the pipeline. And of course, register for camp, because this summer is going to be so cool and we want to have you guys there. But now it's time. We're going to move into our time with Skip, and he is going to go through these 6 and 7 effective goal setting guidelines. And I titled it A Realistic Challenge. Let's listen to Skip.
Goals must be challenging. Someone has made this Someone Anonymous. You all remember Someone Anonymous? Great guy. Lots of quotes from him. Or gal. Someone put a series of contrasts together, which I liked. I'll share them with you. Goals must be mind stretchers, not mind breakers. They must be effort makers, not burnout makers. Make them in accord with your nature and your limits, but constantly stretch your perception of that limit. There is no power in a goal that does not expand your picture of what is possible. So if you set the simplest little goals, there is nothing there to challenge you, nothing there to stretch you, nothing there to take you to the next step, nothing there to move you to the next level of life. It's just kind of getting along to get along. It is not what the goal setting process is designed to be. The goal setting process is designed to stretch us, to take us to the next level, always moving to the next level. Okay. An effective goal is an exciting challenge. It must demand your best and even a bit more, or it isn't going to change your ways and elevate your lifestyle. Without that ingredient in it, the challenging ingredient, it doesn't change much. It may be momentarily satisfying when you accomplish it, but it doesn't stretch you. When you have a challenging goal, you will experience more times of falling short on that goal, what many people would call failure. And I think I've mentioned a couple of times during time together, this would be a really good time for a seminar on failure, making failure our friend. Since this is not the time for that, we won't, but we do need to make failure our friend and see it not as failure, but seeing it as the stepping stone to the next level of development of excellence in our life. When seen in that fashion, then your goals can be challenging. When failure is threatening to you, when you and I fear failure, then our goals will not be challenging. We will set safe goals. Now, at the same time that I've said that, I'm ready for number 7, guideline number 7, which is goals must be realistic. So wait a minute, Skip. I thought you just said they shouldn't be. They should be challenging. Well, they need to be touched by reality. Be able to identify with your goal. Remember, one of the best known statements about this whole thing is the statement that someone made that said, whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. A lady came to me and she said, I don't believe that. I said, it's okay with me. You do. And if you don't, it's okay. She said, well, I just don't believe it. It's not true. I said, well, why would you say it's not true? She said, well, let me ask you a question then. I said, okay. She said, if I really want to become a world-class ballerina, do you think I could become a world-class ballerina? I said, now you need to know this lady was probably 55. She was overweight. You can add another word in there, grossly overweight. She had never danced in her life. Everything going against this goal of being a world-class ballerina. And she's saying to me, do you believe I could become a world-class ballerina? I said, it's not important what I believe. She said, well, I'm asking you the question. I said, well, I'm going to turn it back to you. Here's my question. Can you conceive of you being a world-class ballerina? She said, of course not. I said, then you have your answer, don't you? If the mind cannot conceive it, you're not going to get it. If it can conceive it, but it can't believe it, you're not going to get it. So when we say it's challenging, yes, stretch beyond the realm where you might think it's maybe even a little beyond where you might think right now it's possible, but at least you can begin to buy into that. It's touched with enough reality that says, maybe I can. It's touched with enough reality so that a guy like Roger Bannister could look at all of the evidence of all the runners of his day. He was a medical student. He knew the physical structure of the human body. And he knew that there was not a doctor around that would say mankind has the muscular structure and the lung capacity to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. And he knew that every coach and every runner would say it's never going to be done. I mean, the best have tried, and it's just not going to be done. It's what allowed him to say, but I want to be the first. I'm going to break that barrier. And he began to build that vision, that dream, that belief that indeed he could run a mile in less than 4 minutes, just a little beyond what most people believed was possible. It was touched with reality. He knew it would take a lot of work. He knew it would take a lot of training. He knew that when he actually did that, he would be fully spent when he crossed the line. But he did become the first man to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. In the next 2 years, 125 others did the same thing. Because now they could begin to believe that it was possible because somebody proved it was. So that stretched him to do what nobody else had done, but it was still touched with the reality of the difficulty of the task. So be able to identify with your goal. It is never necessary to lie or to cheat or to steal or to injure you or others to achieve worthwhile goals. See, there are some who set goals way out here to impress people, and then they lie or cheat or steal or hurt themselves or others in the process of getting that goal because they've set it and they have to have it. Not necessary. There is disaster in a goal that is so large that you do not believe it's possible. Goals must be, in some sense, believable. If you don't believe you can achieve a goal, you won't pay the price to accomplish it.
All right. Well, that was our time with Skip. I hope you enjoyed those next two guidelines. And like he said in the audio, get ready for a whole lot more in the upcoming episodes. But in this time, he talked about goals that need to be both a challenge and they need to touch into that realism space. They can't just be crazy, outlandish goals. And I really love these 2 points. I think they're so important in this overarching idea of how to make proper goals that you're really going to accomplish and feel good about accomplishing. So for that first point, that the goals must be challenging, he talks about how the goal must be a mind stretcher, not a mind breaker. He says that they must be effort makers, not just create burnout. That making them in accord with your nature and your limits, but constantly stretching your perception of that limit. He says that there is no power in a goal that does not expand your picture of what is possible. And I think that that's a great little grouping of these ideas of how challenging a goal needs to be. That it's not so much that it breaks your mind. It doesn't create this massive burnout, but it does stretch you. It does pull you into a space that might feel uncomfortable, but is worth the effort. He also says that little goals, they just won't challenge you. An effective goal needs to be exciting. It needs to have that exciting element of challenge to it. And a little goal just won't be effective. It needs to be designed to stretch you to that next level. He talks a lot about moving, that the whole goal setting process is to move you to that next level. And it demands your best, that it changes you and it elevates your lifestyle. He also says that challenging goals will make you experience more times of falling short of that goal, more failure, more times where oh man, you get so close to what you want, but you just don't quite make it. And he says it's really important that we not look at that just as a failure of that goal, but we need to make failure our friend and know that failure is just one of those things on that step to that next level that you're going to have to go through. You're going to have to grind through. You're going to have to push through to get to where you want to go. And he also gives a warning to beware that when failure is threatening you and you don't have that right perspective on failure, you're tempted to not make your goals so challenging. We choose to set safer goals, and that pulls us away from that step that we really want to take. And then from there, he moves on to point number 7. Goals must have that touch of realism. They must be realistic. If they aren't realistic, they're just not believable. And he gives a great quote here that says, whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And that sounds very inspiring, but it's also great guidance in how to create a goal. You don't want something that you can't conceive of, that you can't believe, because you can't achieve that. He gives a great example of a woman coming up to him. And I would love to know who this woman is, because I have heard her story so many times over the years. I'm sure it was just a woman at one of the seminars that I haven't met, but I always like to try and see her face talking to dad like this. But she brings up this great example of, well, do you think I could be some world-class ballerina? And dad has a great response of, well, do you believe you can be a world-class ballerina? Because if you can't conceive it, if you can't believe it, it's not going to happen. And then he also brings up another great example with Roger Bannister. He says he began to build that vision and that dream and that belief that indeed he could run a mile in less than 4 minutes, and just a little beyond what most people believed at that time. And he did it. And he kept that goal grounded because it was touched in reality. Like, it wasn't completely, absolutely outlandishly impossible. It just was beyond what had been done before. He also warns in this particular point to not set goals just to try and impress people, and that we should never lie or cheat or steal or hurt ourselves or others just to get through a goal. A good quote that he says here is, there is a disaster in a goal that is so large that you do not believe it's possible. If you don't believe you can achieve a goal, you won't pay the price to accomplish it. And I think that there's just so many great quotes from this lesson. I could go back and listen to it again and throw in some more, but I thought that those were points that really stood out to me and were just lovely things to dive a little bit more deep into, to talk a little bit more. So I've got I've got my questions percolating, Melody, but do you have any thoughts on this lesson that we went over just now?
I mean, I loved this lesson. I think it's very classic teaching from dad that kind of stretches you in both ways. I think it's kind of the juxtaposition of the challenge versus the reality. The eyes in the clouds and feet on the ground sort of thinking that is wise and that can actually move a person forward in the accomplishment of their goals. So I love it. And I love the quotes that you pulled out from this, because I think they're super important. So thank you for recapping it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll probably just listen to it again, because, these 2 points in particular, in contrast to all the ones that he's done before, they're quintessential to his mentality about goal setting. And I think that, they are the classics.
Yep.
All right. Are you ready for a couple of questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So in this process of pushing ourselves and getting into the right headspace about goal setting, I always want to check in with you, because I feel like you're our mental expert.
Oh boy.
Here. And, you're going to let us know that things are okay. So we just want to do like a mental health check with you. And when we hear these quotes like, goals are designed to always be stretching us, pushing us to that next level. You should change your ways. You should elevate your lifestyle. And that without that challenge, it doesn't change you. He also says accomplishing certain small goals might give you some momentary satisfaction, but it doesn't stretch you. And it just feels like, okay, so it just doesn't matter. And I guess my question is, are these viewpoints that he's saying here, are they absolutely necessary to goal setting? Can the goals just be about maintaining things and keeping your life consistent? And I guess my encapsulating question is, can't we just be happy with where we're at and also do goal setting? Is that possible?
No, I think that's a good question. And I think, the question behind the question of how we keep our mental health in check as we are achieving and accomplishing and growing and living is super important, because I think any strength can get out of balance, and any, achievement mindset can get into an unhealthy place if we're not aware of how we're looking at our work and how we're looking at our goals and how we're taking care of our mental health. So I think it's a really important question. I think, hearing you talk, it brings me back again to the idea of the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset, which we've talked about several times before on the podcast. But the idea that people either have a fixed mindset, which says, I am who I am, I do what I do, and I'll never change. And then the growth mindset that says, I'm always growing, I'm always becoming more of the person I am, and I'm always learning new things. And I think, the research has shown people with a growth mindset have a significantly better state of mental health, because there is something innate in us as humans that wants to continue to grow and to learn and to become. And so I think the question of, can't we just be happy where we're at? Absolutely. Like, I think there is a certain beauty and importance of contentment in our lives as far as maybe the things that we have or the work that we do or things of that nature. And I think building our lives to a place where we can be content is huge and absolutely worth celebrating and holding. But I do think even when we have built our life to a place where we're content with our, our work and our belongings and things of that nature, maybe our relationships, there's two things I would say. Number one, there's always going to have to be continued growth to even maintain those things, right? So like our work and our homes and our relationships and things of that nature, the status quo can't be maintained if we just do nothing towards health. We still have to move towards health. We still have to move towards growth in those things that we love. And number two, there is still more space for us to become the people that we're created to be. So when we look at this in the context of our ultimate goal, I think there's always space to continue to stretch and move towards, as Dad puts it, the next level, move towards becoming more of the people that we're created to be. And I think that when we're looking at it that way, and when we're looking at it from a place of, I am content and I am growing, that's probably what I would say is the best mental health space to be in.
I love it. Yep. I totally agree. And I think those are great points to bring up as a response to that. Well, I wrote down always be learning, because I think like if you're excited about growing, then you're always happy to be in that right state of mind of, yeah, I am pushing myself outside of what I'm comfortable with, but that's where I want to be happy.
Yep.
And just having that right mental state as you're going through this process is really important, to not look at yourself as a failure or to put yourself down as you're trying to move yourself into a place where you think you want to go. But that does lead me to my next question, which is about failure. So for number 2, he says a quote, I kind of shortened it a bit, but he says, if we fear failure, we will set safer goals. So we want to look at failure as a friend on the path to that next level of success. And I just want to touch on this viewpoint as well and ask, like, is this point necessary? Can we can we not also want to avoid failure in this process? Can we get excited about not failing instead of excited about seeing failure coming? And then are we really supposed to look at safe goals as an enemy and failure as a friend? Is that really the statement that we're supposed to take away from this? Is there some more clarity and context that you can give to that idea?
Yeah. For this one, I'd say that's pretty accurate, to be honest with you. Like, of course, there's clarity and context, but yeah, I don't think we can be in the place of realism if we think that we're going to grow and not fail. It is part of growth. It is part of the process. So if we're stuck in some, fantasy where we think that growth can happen without failure, we essentially are expecting ourselves to be perfect, and to miss out on a whole important part of learning, which is failing. So if we want to always be learning, if we want to always be growing, then we can't miss one of the most formative ways of learning, which is failure. So to that extent, yeah, I think we do have to look at it as a friend. I think we do have to move past the place where we feel the need to avoid failure in order to move forward with our goals. I do think, as bluntly as Dad says it, is probably as bluntly as it needs to be. I do think safe goals as an enemy, maybe, that may be not, it might not need to be that harsh. I think I've set a lot of safe goals in my life, to be honest. Maybe they weren't so safe that I didn't think I would fail at all, but they were safe enough that I knew that I would overall succeed. Even if I failed in pieces along the way, I knew that, I would succeed in the end. And so in that sense, I think those goals were safe. I don't regret those goals. I think those goals have still helped me to move forward. But I can tell you that the things I've worked towards that did not feel safe have probably made the most impact in the world and have probably stretched me the most to become the person that I'm created to be, and have maybe made the most difference in the lives of the people that I love. So I do think that I don't think we need to look at safe goals as an enemy. I think there's always, in my list of goals, I think there's going to be some that are on the safe side, but I think I want there to be some that don't feel safe, that do feel like a stretch, more of a stretch, because I know that those are the ones that are probably going to be the most impactful and make the most change in me as a person. So I think maybe that kind of answers your question. Sorry if I went off on a little bit of a tangent, but yeah, failure is our friend.
Yeah, I love that response. I have a question to that then. Would it be correct in thinking, when we were talking a few episodes ago about those 6 types of goals and how that goal breakdown looks of, stemming from the ultimate goal and then breaking down the hierarchy of smaller to smaller to smaller. When we're talking about that, is it okay if the mental state around that is, okay, like the ultimate goal, that's incredibly advanced, right? This is the big concept thing of the dreams and aspirations of your life. And then the bigger goal, it might seem impossible, but it's a step that, if all those smaller steps are taken, is accomplishable. Mm-hmm. And then those smaller steps start to move towards that more believable range.
Yep.
Is that the right mentality to have towards this?
Yeah, I think that's very similar to that Jon Acuff book that I've been talking about recently. All it takes is a goal. He has the automatic goals, as he calls them, which is essentially those little steps that lead to the medium ones that lead to the automatic ones. So yes, I think that's a great way to break it down and look at it.
So the safe goals, we shouldn't call them safe goals.
Right.
We should just call them small goals leading to a more impossible outcome.
Yep, exactly.
All right. Let's see. I also took a note down. It reminds me of the quote, "A journey starts with a single step, but it doesn't end because you fall down."
Yeah.
Don't worry about the failure. Worry about just continuing on with the goal.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's see. If I have my notes in front of me, I can ask you question number 3, which is about Roger Bannister. I love whenever Dad brings him up as an illustration, and I loved it in this lesson. And I just wanted to touch on this idea. I know at the beginning of this lesson on goal setting, he brought up the crazy ones or the outside thinkers. And I feel like Roger Bannister is a great illustration of that, like a trendsetter mindset. And to be able to do something that everyone thought was impossible, and inspiring others to create a new standard of how things can be done. How do you develop belief like that into an impossible thing when every expert says it can't be done? Do you just have to be crazy like that? How does that mindset come out of this sort of goal setting?
That is a good question. That is a very good question. I've always been very intrigued with the story of Roger Bannister as well, especially as I became a runner and realized just what a feat it is to do a sub 4-minute mile. Let me put it this way. What I know is that we need people who will be the trendsetters and who will determine to do things that right now we feel are impossible. Like our world needs those people. Our country needs those people. Our kids need those people. Our kids hopefully will be those people. And I think, I don't think it's a matter of just being crazy or just looking at the world and finding something that's never been done and then trying to do it. I think it's more a matter of looking within ourselves and discovering what it is we were created to do, and then doing that thing in a way that only we can do. And I think that particular way of being and accomplishing something is an impossibility for anyone else in the world. So, if Roger Bannister was created to break this sub 4-minute mile, then he was the one to do it. And, in similar fashion, I think there are stories within some of us that we are the only ones who can tell. I think there are ideas in some of us that we are the only ones who can bring to life. I think there's love in some of us, and we're the only ones who can give it to the particular people who need it in a particular moment. So I think that it's less about, I'm going to be this amazing person who does something that no one has ever done before. And it's more about the prestige of being that person and doing something that's never been done. And it's more about looking inside yourself, discovering what you were created for, and then doing that in the way you were created to do it. And I think if we all lived like that, we'd all be doing a lot of things that people think are impossible.
I love that response too. I think, not setting our limits by what others say, but what we see and believe in ourselves is great. Is that an encapsulating thought to what you're saying?
Yeah. I think that's a great way to put it.
Well, I love these responses, and I love this lesson. I think our listeners can definitely get a lot out of it. I'm going to go back and listen to it again. But do we have any closing thoughts as we finish this time with everyone this week?
Yeah, I'd just say let's not be afraid of the challenge. Let's keep our eyes on the clouds and feet on the ground, and remember that this way of stretching ourselves in both of these directions will help us healthily and wisely and effectively grow and accomplish the goals that we're created to accomplish. So I'm excited about it too.
Well, thank you, Melody. I think that was awesome.
Yeah. Yep. It's been a good episode. Well, thank you, Stephen, as well. And thank you all for joining us on this journey with the Reflections Cast. Remember that your support means everything. So if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit the like button or write us a review or leave us a voicemail. And please share this episode with friends, family, or anyone you think might benefit from our discussions. We believe in you, and we're committed to helping you thrive on your journey of discovering all you were created to be. Until next time, keep reflecting, keep growing, and pass it on.